Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. I'm so glad you could attend. Come inside. Come inside. Well, good evening, folks. Sorry for the slight delay there. Had a bit of a technical problem. How are you all? It's good to see you. It's good to be seen by you. In just a hot minute, we're going to welcome tonight's guest. Of course, I know you're all eager to greet him and have questions for him and chat with him. So he'll be on in just a hot minute. But of course, as always, I want to say special thanks. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Hellebarde Publishers. Hellebarde publishes the modules they'd like to play, whether it's offerings for OSR, Castles and Crusades, or 5th edition. No matter what rules are in use, Old School is in play at the table, and you can pick them up on DriveThruRPG or via the Hellebarde website at hellebardegames.com. So with that said, folks, of course, I know you nice people out there in the chat, you're all keen to talk to the man, the myth, dare I say, the myth mirror himself. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome tonight's guest, the one, the only, Matt Finch. Matt, how the heck are you, brother?
Good. How you doing, Bill?
I can't complain. I mean, I could, but who'd listen?
Yeah, well, that's true.
So, my goodness, your Kickstarter has exploded. You're like 66 grand now?
Okay, well, let me take a look. Because, of course, I don't have it right up on the screen available to check. We're at $70,189.
Wow. That is, so you've hit a couple of stretch goals, right?
Yeah, well, actually not yet, because we didn't put up stretch goals until the second day, but we're going to be doing, just because of the question of the order of them, but we're going to do, stretch goals are going to be PDFs of the spell books. So one for magic users, one for clerics, one for druids. And those, we got to avoid doing something that's going to create additional production time that could push back the actual fulfillment of the Kickstarter. And I think, we're not going to space those too far apart. So I will probably hit all of those planned stretch goals. And then maybe we'll do, inserts for a GM screen, something like that. But I'm not real big on gimmicks with Kickstarters, so for me, stretch goals are either just stuff to keep people, interested, but things that are useful. If we really get big up around the 300,000 mark, we might think about doing something that's a little larger of a project. But that's, those spell books are what we've got right now, and probably a GM screen insert.
Right on. So not a lot of FOMO built into those, which I know a few Kickstarters do that.
Yeah, there's different approaches to Kickstarters. I prefer to have the thing, pretty much done at the time that you launch, and to be able to deliver it, very quickly after the time that the Kickstarter ends. And there's other philosophies of that. There's the Bones model, where what people are basically buying is an empty box, and then please fill it based on, how many people back the Kickstarter. And I'll run out and try and get as many of people to join the Kickstarter as I can. And that's a very successful business model, but it works better for things that have a really steeply declining cost curve as you increase the number of things that you're getting, which books have that, but it's not anything like, manufacturing plastic miniatures.
Right. And I think, I've observed Kickstarter as it's been going, and I've never put anything up there. I might. There's a little project, lowercase p, but not really here to talk about that. I think a lot of like, it's me and my friend, or it's just me and I hire some artists kind of guys who do this solo, they see, particularly in tabletop RPG material, right? Because, we all have that great idea when it comes to stuff, that adventure, that variation on the rules, that campaign setting, that series of adventures, what have you. And I think there's a bit of misunderstanding perhaps amongst creators. I mean, certainly this is not something that Mythmere or any of the folks you've been with have run into, but there's a sense of, well, I'll get the money and then I'll do the job.
Yeah.
And even if they get the job done, they don't realize there's no Kickstarter factory that's going to package your stuff up for you, that's going to drive back and forth to the post office, that's going to go to the printer and argue on your behalf, look, you printed half the pages upside down.
Right. Yeah. Logistics are the big trip up in Kickstarter. Most people know how to produce the product that they're planning on coming out with, but what they don't know, what they're not so familiar with, is the delivery of the product. And some people, if it's something outside your area of expertise, publishing's relatively easy as compared to manufacturing, but people can bite off more than they can chew.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, again, just speaking for myself, that's one of the things that's always kind of, I've been like, one, is my idea really good enough? And two, can I really follow through with that with the
okay, but here's the whole thing, and you're talking about one of the core things about the whole OSR plus whatever the OSR equivalent is in 5e, because they've got it going on too. And it's this. It's really important for the gaming community to foster DIY projects, small projects that, you've got, very few projects can be done with one person, but a whole lot can be done with two. And there are a ton of creative people out there. And as you said, every single one of them has usually got at least one really good idea that's their baby. It's usually an adventure, I think, but sometimes, it may be a couple of, here are some house rules that work really well.
Mm-hmm.
And since 2005, when people started actually doing cottage publishing for the old school stuff, that's there was just a real explosion of creativity. And there's a lot of people talking about how the OSR has declined. I don't think it has declined. I think what's happened is that we've kind of forgotten those DIY roots, that this is really about getting individual small creators to be able to come out with their thing that's really good, and to make money for it, so that you can afford an artist or a layout person or a cartographer, whatever it is that fills the gap in your own skills. But I think DIY is incredibly important to the gaming community if we want to continue to see, because look at how many people right now are upset about the level of commercialization that we've got in the OSR or in the gaming community in general with 5th edition. And it's not really, I think all of those people who are complaining about commercialization, they're not really complaining about the quality of the products that are coming out, but is leading them to sort of look down at the small publisher who's just starting out and maybe doesn't have the can't spend all the money on the best art, whatever it might be. They're on the one hand looking down at those people, and on the other hand they're being overwhelmed with advertising when you look through your Facebook feed, and you've got all sponsored ad after sponsored ad after sponsored ad. But no one's really against the idea of gamers going out there and creating little products to the best of their ability, and putting those out there for the community and getting a little bit of cash back for those. I think that was one of the in the sort of golden age of the OSR, whenever you might put that, and it might be now, but that's really been the driving force behind the very, very creative stuff that's come out of gaming, is people's willingness to, number one, produce stuff, and on the other hand, to take a look at the things that people are coming out with without complaining about this is over commercialized or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm. And I first of all, I agree very much with what you're saying. As someone, God, this is going to sound like I'm trying to overinflate my ego, and I swear I'm not, because I mean we're here for you and about you. But having kind of at least been in the room when the OSR was born, my take with the state of the OSR right now, first of all, no, it's not dying. Anybody that went to Gary Con this weekend or that goes to North Texas RPG, year in and year out, you'll be at NTRPG, right?
You asking me?
Yeah, you.
Yeah, I'm going to North Texas this year. Yeah.
Yeah, so you'll be at anybody who attends those cons. And I mean, certainly they're not Gen Con, I get that, but anybody who gets those and looks around would understand right off the bat that the OSR is not dying and it's not going anywhere. I think there's been it's abated some, which is a good thing, but I think there was a sort of internecine period, maybe 3-4 years ago, when it seems almost like there was a the, as in capital T, the OSR, and you marched lockstep and you did certain things. You know what I'm talking about, right? It's a little. It just seemed like it was becoming a very stratified thing.
Oh yeah, no, and I remember also going back earlier. There was a point in time, and it was about, I don't know, 2007 thereabouts, on Knights and Knaves, when I went on there and I read a bunch of stuff, and I was like, Jesus, all of this is just dogma at this point. Everyone has agreed on what is old school, and they're just talking about that. And then that went, and like 3 months later, that was gone. It was like that little phase was over, and it moved on from there. So I think you sort of hit, cycles in the whole thing. But yeah, I mean, the OSR has been dead several times, but it's always come back bigger.
Yeah, I mean, we've been deader than Dracula. I don't know how many times, and we keep ripping that stake out and rising up out of the coffin. And I think Will hits it off here. I've seen some great comments, guys, and we're gonna get to those. But Will says scenes that form around anything are doomed to become about themselves rather than the original thing. And I think that happened in a large part a few years ago, and it was like, be seen publishing something that is exactly this, be seen on these forums and groups and playing these variations of Swords and Wizardry or Osrig, or else you're nowhere, man. And that chapped me. So I was like, this is not the way, But
yeah,
that's
inclusion is, of systems as well as people, as well as, that's the real characteristic of it is, I think is inclusion, and it is, being willing to take somebody who's doing a DIY project and, not be rude to that person who, even though they've got, terrible, line, stuff that they did themselves because they couldn't hire an artist or whatever it might be. But the willingness to see somebody's project and not be a dick about, the things, because what you get out of that, given a little bit of time, is some extraordinary stuff. The things that are, at the present moment, it's, the articles that are being contributed to Knock magazine. Further back, it was the ones being contributed to Knockspell magazine. The blogs, the here's a monster, you can get to the point where you've got a constant stream of really, really good stuff, as long as you are friendly to the people who are taking their evening out to try and type a thing. So
yeah, definitely.
I don't know why I'm on this soapbox, because I'm I'm mainly here to talk about I've just been thinking about the things that are going on, and I've happened to see a couple of Facebook posts here and there where people, somebody put up a thing and they were like, here's my thing, and they got shot down for it, which I just hate to see when that kind of thing happens out there. So
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you 100%. And as far as getting on a soapbox here, well, I mean, you can ask my audience. I never get on a soapbox. This never becomes a platform for polemics for me. So, you know, you're certainly in unfamiliar waters here.
Yeah.
But
By the way, since I saw people talking about the movie before we even started, stepping back to the movie, Susie and I went to go see the movie. Definite 2 thumbs up. We thought, I mean, I prefer the sort of Greyhawk feel to D&D over the Forgotten Realms kind of feel. But you know, but as long as you can accept the Forgotten Realms, or certainly if you're a Forgotten Realms fan, I thought this was a really, really fun movie.
all right, all right. I've heard positive things about it. But we do have a few comments here. I'm gonna hit the ones. Squirrel Hermit says homebrew DIY is the way, which I think that definitely hits on what we're talking about. In STEM, zine scene rocks, absolutely in STEM. Jan Hook says DIY zines like Knock Mags meld so well with Swords and Wizardry. I do it all the time. My players love it. We've got a few votes in for your for your next stretch goal here. Rachel says, I vote for DM screen inserts.
DM screen inserts are that's probably the next thing that we do. We're probably not talking about art, but the inside of a DM screen. We'll probably get the tables together and put that out as a PDF. That's probably the next one after the different spellcaster books. We just sort of ranked things in order of what's the most usable resource out there. And so we've got the ones for the players, because I think that, having the spells in order by level is very, very convenient if you're a player, and then something for the GM screen. So yeah, that's the plan.
Right on. Mark Hyde says, so glad for you, Matt. Amazing success.
Thank you.
Let's see. Will Mistretta says, those interchangeable inserts are great. A much better alternative than another standalone screen. We like to see the flexible stuff. Vartok Games says, networking and social media exposure helps promote the Kickstarter a lot. And Bob Gesture has a question. How many days are left on the Kickstarter?
I think it's like 26, but let me give you for sure. No, it's 25.
25. There you go.
And although according to the way Kickstarter counts it, that extra day only started at noon. We launched the Kickstarter about at noon. So
right on. Well, there you go. So you guys have plenty of time to save up those pennies and jump in on this Kickstarter. I know I am. Matthew O'Brien says he loved the project. Sorry, John, my mistake. I should have my readers on when I'm reading screen names. I'll fetch those straight away. My old man glasses there. That's a little better. Let's see. William Stefan is an all-in backer. Bob Jester, 25 days cool. Just pledged to the Kickstarter. That's very cool. Kabuki says, I also read that Honor Among Thieves has a short after-credit sequence as a head-up if you go see it. So if I check it out, I will take that under consideration. So with this Kickstarter, I mean, I hate to put the cart before the horse, but what's next, man? I mean, what's over the horizon?
Well, there are two things, either one of which might come first, depending on the scheduling. One of them, everybody who's following this Kickstarter knows about, which is that we're just in this Kickstarter, we're just doing, basically, rule book, a couple of modules, and and then the stretch goals, which are minor supplements, and that's it. And then the next Kickstarter planned for Swords and Wizardry is probably going to be something that's akin to Unearthed. Wow, my tongue just something that's akin to Unearthed Arcana, which will have a couple of alternate character classes for people. Because a lot of people want to see the strategic review bard, and various bard alternatives. and then there's a you got evenly divided between two groups of people. You got the people who I like purely archetypal character classes, and we individualize them based on what happens to the character. Or you've got the group of people who want to have a multitude of different character classes, with each thing. So the Unearthed Arcana one will probably have a barbarian, that broader scope of different types of character classes for those that don't like to play just purely the archetypes in there. And so that's possibility number one. And then the other thing that we're working on at the moment is a computer app of Tome of Adventure Design that will do some of the stuff that you just cannot do in a book. So for example, it'll be able to generate names. So instead of just saying a mage sends you on a quest to find a cat, the mage Menzabaranzan sends you to go on a quest for a cat, and that adds a lot to it. But you really can't do something like that in book format for various reasons. But it's just it's when you're constrained to tables in a book, you're fairly limited, whereas in a computer you're working with lists, not tables. So that's in the works right now too, and we'll give more news on that once we're a little further along with it.
Excellent. A couple of comments here. I think people are casting in their ballots. Mark Hyde says, monstrosities, please. UA type thing is an epic idea, though. And Zach Doherty says, if you do happen to put forth referees inserts, could you consider landscape orientation as an option too, if possible? Looking over 11-inch screens is excessive.
That's probably not too hard to do. Let me actually make a note on that one, though. So landscape and portrait versions of the GM screen. This is where you get into the difficulty with the screens and the inserts. It's just that people do them differently. I actually don't like the portrait oriented DM screen just because it's tall and hard to look over the top of. I like the landscape oriented ones, but then when you're getting landscape oriented, they're all kinds of different lengths depending on how it is that people use it to do. So making and when you're doing one of these for a PDF, you've got to it's not flexible. You do it in a size, and that's it, and that's what's downloadable. So but yeah, we'll probably do one that's probably so landscape orientation would be what, 3? I'm going to need the answer to this from the guys in the chat. Are we talking about 3 pieces of paper landscape oriented or 2? Because I will need to know that.
Well, there you go. You're being
I know that for portrait orientation, we're probably talking about 3, and the 3 will stand up adequately well. But for those who use a landscape DM screen, let me know how many pieces of paper we're talking about.
Yeah, there you go. Kevin says yes, 3. Mark Hyde says 3. 3. John Hook 3. Vortac 3. Bob Jester 3. Vincent Natabartolo 3. Kevin 3. William Stefan 4. Get out.
He marches to the beat of his own drummer.
Vortex says 3 is too long. And now I tell you what I want to see in a Game Master screen. You've seen Paul Stormberg's ultimate Advanced Dungeons and Dragons DM screen, right?
I don't think so. What?
He has every possible reference on this thing, and he made it look like something that TSR would have published. But Matt, I'm not kidding you. The thing is like 9 or 12 panels across. But it's Paul Stormberg. Of course he's going to have that.
He's a completist, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And I would love to have one of those just to intimidate the hell out of players at a con or an event. Just like, here's my Game Master screen. Unfold. It's just like, where does it stop? Original Hackmaster screen is right out then. That was the one with the plates that you flipped over and it had like spiral binding on it and everything. Those were nuts. Yeah, William Paul has a good start. Raven has backed this one. Seal and Quell Poe. I know I'm going to mess that up. So the GM sits in the middle and the players sit around him.
Like a campfire story.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Will says, mine is portrait with 3 panels. Usually the interior 3 are charts and the exterior art.
And that's the one that, you know, we'll do easily because everyone knows the 3-panel portrait type of thing back from the, you know, Trampier illustration, Trampier illustration on the outside. That one's easy. The question where there was the variation was, you know, people do different things with the landscape size. So that was where I needed the input on that one. We can do a 3-panel portrait one. That's fairly easy. We know what to get, you know, what that'll look like. So,
yeah.
You have got a lot of people watching the show at the moment, Bill. There's 50 people watching.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Thank you everyone for clocking in. I see a lot of names that I recognize. I see a lot of names that are new. I hope you folks will consider sticking around. And if you haven't already, click that subscribe button, click the like button. That always helps. And, you know, if you're watching this video in the future, you can leave a comment below. I definitely read the comments and I will forward any questions, comments, or critiques to Matt directly. We appreciate that. So,
and if anyone here is coming from the because I posted a link to this video on the update to the Kickstarter, and so if there are any Kickstarter backers who have questions about things that are going to be going on in the Kickstarter, feel free to, you know, put that question in the chat, and Bill will relay it to me. And actually, I'm secretly, you know, looking over at the chat myself every once in a while, usually when Bill gets going talking, because when he does, you've got a few minutes there where you can, you know.
Yeah, I won't shut up. So he has plenty of time to read things. Well, thank you very much. Jorge, thanks for backing. William Stefan, thank you for liking and subscribing. I appreciate it. Rachel says, I would love a player side 3-panel image of my of like a castle entrance to slide into my screen. Orbital's asking me a question. Yeah, he was on. We have a new fan of the show and a new member of the YouTube family. If you guys who are here just for Matt's, if you like the content I do, also here on YouTube, there's a guy, a young man, Vile Necromancer. You should go subscribe to his channel too. I would be here all night telling you who you should go subscribe to on YouTube, and that's the beauty of YouTube, is it's not like a TV channel. It's not like, well, I can only watch the one because the other one is on at the same time. But we actually have some business here.
Hang on, let me step back to Rachel's question.
Yes,
because she was asking about the castle entrance. I don't think that we're going to do the outward facing art for the screen, although maybe that's later stretch goals. What I'm mainly thinking about is just the inward facing panels with the tables and things for it. So something like a castle entrance wall is probably not something that we've got on the table right at the moment, Rachel, although that is not actually something that had not crossed my mind to do the art, and that is also something that we could do. So that may actually be the stretch goals coming after the tables would be getting some color art for the outside. Color art's relatively expensive, you know, relative to other things, but we'll look into that for the stretch goal. So, okay.
Right on. Let's see. I wanna grab a few questions here. I can star these and then jump over to them. Let's see. Mage's Musing asks, I assume those 2 adventures on the Kickstarter are reasonably compatible with 1E AD&D?
Oh yeah. The big thing with making the jump from OD&D to AD&D is just the hit dice work the same, but your characters are going to have somewhat fewer hit points on average than you will see in first edition, because like in first edition your fighter has a 10-sided hit die, whereas in Swords and Wizardry and all of the BX games, the fighter's the D8 and then the cleric is a D6, and so you're working with characters who have somewhat fewer hit points. and then the armor class range in AD&D goes from an unarmored AC of 10, whereas it's a 9 in the other set, in the OD&D and BX type games. So there's a range of 10 and a different range on the armor classes. But honestly, the differences are so small that when I'm playing something for first edition using OD&D rules or using Swords and Wizardry rules, I don't even change it. I just say this is a little bit harder adventure than it was written to be, and I don't even make any conversion at all.
Right on. Well, there you have straight from Matt. Let's see. Johnny White says, "Is the Toad reprint possible as an add-on stretch goal in a future Kickstarter?"
Yeah, we've actually had people ask about doing that on this Kickstarter, and as far as I understand, because the thing is that it's available right now. So what people are asking is just, can I lump this in for a later delivery so that my shipping will cost less, as I understand what the request is about getting Toad lumped in. We are taking a look right now at how much that would save people, because we don't quite get the whole, I'm willing to wait, this long for the thing, but I do understand it's expensive shipping on Toad if you're outside of the United States. So we're just checking what is the effect of adding a 4.125 pound book onto the shipping structure that we've got here. And it will probably work, but we need to check it in a bunch of different countries to find out, because the thing is, you don't pay on a linear basis for additional weight. You pay, here's a chunk, and there's no extra cost, no extra cost, no extra cost, huge extra cost, no extra cost, no extra cost, no extra cost, huge extra cost. And we just need to make sure that we don't create a situation either where we are overcharging the customers out of caution because of those jumps, or on the other hand, ending up spending more money because we pay what the actual shipping is going to be. And if it turns out to hit in the wrong place. So we are looking into that, and we'll probably have an answer on that by tomorrow.
Well, there you have it. Let's see. John Hook, any plans for an expanded monsters tome? I'd love to see new creatures and maybe even a flowchart toolkit included in the book to create new monsters.
Yeah, that is what we're planning for doing in the next Kickstarter, not the flowchart part, but a monster book. And I think that probably what we'll do is cherry pick monstrosities, because with monstrosities, I didn't, when we left Frog God, I didn't take the title to that book, and I did not take the little quests that were in that book, but I had written most of the monsters that are in that book before ever joining Frog God. So I've got the intellectual property rights to the monsters that are in there. So probably what we'll do is cherry pick monstrosities. We may take some of the monsters that I wrote for other monster books, and then we're going to want to put in some new ones. It's always difficult to make the decision between here's something that is out of print, but you probably have a copy, but here it is anyway because you're going to want it, as opposed to here is brand new stuff that's adding to the overall mix of things. So we're probably going to combine those two concepts into one book, rather than doing here's an old monster book and a new monster book. We'll see. You can probably tell I don't have a written out in stone plan for what exactly we're doing in this next Kickstarter. It's just I've got the theme in my head. It'll be the supplemental materials to add to the game, and so people will first get the the basic rules, and here's this, and then another thing that we're hoping down the road is to do one that is a basic version, because Swords and Wizardry is it's usually cited as one of the games that one of the OSR games that people use to teach new players, which I think is just because it's got a more walkthrough kind of presentation in the book. So when you're learning it, it's relatively intuitive to learn it, as opposed to one that's more of a reference tome. So these plans are all out there, but I don't have them put into an organized set of thoughts about it, which is why I sound so vague when I'm talking about the future Kickstarters.
Right on. And speaking of rules out there, Seal and Quell Poe asked, the curious thing is I was considering to ask Matt if he would consider putting Swords and Wizardry under Creative Commons like a month after WotC put the SRD 5 under Creative Commons.
We're going to do something a bit similar to that, but not putting it into Creative Commons. The difficulty with Creative Commons is that when you've got your own trademark, like the words, Swords and Wizardry showing up through the whole thing, is how to separate out the parts that you want to keep and control as opposed to the parts that you want to let out there. We're definitely going to have a license that allows third-party publishers to publish stuff for Swords and Wizardry. It is going to be an open license, which adds another layer of complexity because that says one publisher can use work from another publisher because they used the license to do it, and that will either be the ORC license if Paizo comes out with that in the right time frame, or it will be one that Mark Greenberg and I have talked about a little bit that is basically just a mirror of the old OGL, except that it fixes the problems with it includes the word irrevocability. We've been talking back and forth about how the OGL restricts your ability to mention somebody else's trademark. And I wanted to kind of have that concept in there because I want people to be able to say, or I want people to have to say, this other company has not reviewed my stuff, and therefore this is not indicative of their opinions. And this is to try and handle the issue that at the moment the OSR is very politically split, and so you've got people on the left who don't want to use stuff from people on the right. People on the right won't want to lose. So if you have a disclaimer on there that says, the opinions in this do not reflect this person whose open game content I am using, I think that at least ratchets that back a little bit in order to allow more people to use more stuff purely for gaming purposes. But if you do that, and so I was initially leaning sort of toward the Wizards of the Coast side, and what Mark suggested was no, he wanted to go do something that says, look, any fair use of trademarks, you're good to go, because Wizards restricted something that you otherwise could have done if you weren't using the OGL, which is talk about somebody else's trademark as long as you said, I'm not affiliated with this company that owns it. So I think what we're probably aiming at is some sort of middle ground where it says, you can use it with fair use, but please put in this disclaimer. But then you can use trademarks in there. And I realize that sorry, I probably just got super legal and technical in there about the thinking on it, but that is the other alternative that we could go with. The relative benefits on one side or the other is that the ORC license is going to be well thought through by a number of lawyers, and so you're going to have a lot of different perspectives on it. And the difficulty with a license like this is foreseeing problems in the future. And so the more people you've got who are looking at it, the more likely that you're going to say, hey, you know what, here's something that might arise. Let's do this. Whereas, but on the other hand, I think the wheels are going to turn fairly slowly on the ORC license, because now that Wizards has not actually deauthorized the OGL like they said they were going to, the heat is off of Paizo in terms of turning that around very, very quickly. And the other benefit on the side of using something that's similar to the OGL is the most difficult thing about a license is getting a sense of how it works the first time, reading legalese, getting a sense of it. And so people have already done that with the OGL. They're going to have to restart with the ORC license and sort of get a sense for how is it this is supposed to work. Whereas something that basically mirrors the OGL, that everyone can pretty much start without much difficulty, because they understand how it goes. All that they have to do is say, hey, this is different here. What does this do? This is different here. What does that do? And when all that you've got to look at is where the thing has changed, that's a lot easier to learn how to use that license. So that is the there is another option, which the folks who are very, very pro creating a body of open game content tend to be in favor of. This is Ryan Dancy, especially is in this group, who want to see things put out into the Creative Commons license, but not under the one that Wizards used. There is another version of the Creative Commons license which says you may use this stuff, but you then have to make your stuff available on the same terms that, when with the same level of openness that I used it when I took it from these other people. And that creates a body of open content. But the problem is it becomes very, very difficult to separate out your own intellectual property from the stuff that you're allowing out there. It can be done, but it means that almost every time you have to separately create an SRD for that project. And if you are a cottage industry guy who wants to put out a 3-page adventure, you are simply not going to want to go to the effort of working your way through this license, creating a separate SRD for your thing, and then getting it out there. And so I think that approach, I think, it's fine for publishers, who are making money on their things and who have familiarity with the laws. But I think that could potentially crush the DIY market, and the DIY creators, who like I said at the very beginning of the show, are the most important people out there in terms of the gaming communities getting content to use, interesting stuff. And so that's not a direction I am going to go, but we are going to have an open license that people can use without having to check in and get permission and stuff like that, and create it. Because I really, here's the thing. I think we are potentially, although in January everyone was thinking, my gosh, this could be the end of the OSR publishing. It could be the end of third-party publishing in the gaming community. I think we're actually on the cusp of a very big increase in the quality and the sorts of products and the quantity of those products that are out there. I think we're in a position right at the moment where the OSR could really truly flourish in the creative atmosphere that we're going to have now that so many people are no longer planning on using the OGL. They're looking at other licensing schemes. That frees you up in a lot of ways. And every time something like this happens that shakes the foundations of something, you see a new flourishing of creativity. And I don't know why, but that does, I think, happen. And so I think that the OSR and probably the 5th edition publishers as well are just standing on the threshold of what is probably going to be a very big leap in creativity and quality and the availability of resources, and the types of products that are out there. I think that we're probably looking at the dawn of another golden type age of gaming coming up right at this point in time.
Well, that's excellent. And that kind of goes a ways to answer questions like when Wizards of the Coast pulled the plug. And let me just say something. I am obviously not of a legal, legally acute mindset. But personally, I think when, and this is just paranoid ramblings, anybody in the audience, Matt, you guys can shout me down on this, but I think oh, no, we're going to put everything in the Creative Commons. I personally think that was a stopgap to slow down work, to slow down Black Flag, to slow down individual attempts, because now there's not a hurry.
Right.
They back down. Now there's not a hurry. That buys a little bit of breathing room for Wizards of the Coast to pull their next step of shenanigans, which are coming. You hear that whistling sound? That's the other shoe plummeting floorwards. But the other thing I was going to mention, as a small creator, I mean, like I said, Tracy Lesh and I've got a thing. Not really going to talk about it until there's more than just that bit of information to share. But everything's fine on January 14th, and then on January 17th, war were declared. And that put a crimp in things. So here I go from literally a guy sitting at his computer and Tracy sitting at his art easel to, do we need to find lawyers? I mean, that is a terrifying prospect for a kitchen sink level guy or couple of guys to go from, we have a really cool idea and we love D&D, to, let me talk to a couple of attorneys. And the third point I would make, and this is, I don't know, maybe this is a little more controversy, maybe this is a little more sticky. You talk about,
controversy, you?
Me? No, not controversial, not me. But putting a boilerplate in a license, whatever it is, that says, and the person who created this doesn't necessarily agree with the things that we're saying, is absolutely fantastic. And I love that idea, because there's a few people early on right at the dawn of the OSR, and these people were more than willing to watch the creators of Osric, you as a creator of Swords and Wizardry, to climb up out of the trenches and start walking across no man's land and say, we're right behind you, watch you guys potentially take any pitfalls, and then coming behind you, they produced, look, let's just be honest, on the face of it, some pretty objectionable stuff. And I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to name projects, but I think you know who I'm talking about. I know who I'm talking about. And it always rubbed me wrong, because you see out on the fringes of the hobby, people who want to get into classic D&D, whether it's or into classic D&D only insofar as they want to play Swords and Wizardry or Osric. Then they look over and they see, and they're like, oh, that's made for this? Hard pass. I'll just go back to my 3rd edition, 4th edition, 5th edition game. And then that, the internet echoplex starts roaring back and forth with, hey, did you know those games are used to make these things? So therefore, those people who made the games must agree with these things. So I think a boilerplate in there that, look, we don't agree with this is absolutely vital. And on its face, it's ridiculous, right? Because that's like saying, because you see something objectionable on TV, it's Sony's fault for making the television. It's RCA's fault for inventing the VCR, and they're so those things are so incredibly untrue, and so I would hope that whatever comes down the line, whoever wants to create their gaming materials, at least have that between guys like you and me and them.
Because to be fair, a lot of the stuff that was produced was phenomenal that came out afterwards too. So I think the issue is simply just to create a splash guard in between every, because it would box off every publisher from every other publisher. That whole, this has not been reviewed, I'm using their stuff, but they have not reviewed what I did. We're not affiliated with them, assuming that they're not, and that that the opinions are not necessarily theirs. The things that I'm saying in here, and I think having that in there would go a long way to anything that's not really out there at the fringes. I think that will probably reduce some of the friction among the different political communities within the OSR.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And to Certus, when I agree with you, there's a ton of great stuff that followed, right? I mean, you could fill up all of your bookshelves and all of my bookshelves with one copy each of the amazing stuff that's come out after Swords and Wizardry and after Osric, and you and I both would run out of room still. We'd have stuff piled on the floor. but the unfortunate reality is, in today's hypersensitive, echo chambery society, is all it takes is one thing, right? You know, all it takes is one thing that a community might find objectionable, and then they, you know, greetings, Dungeon Minister. But we do have some some more questions here. The K5K says, I'm backing this after an excellent experience with Toad Revised. I've signed up all in, got to have that excellent blue cover along with all the other goodies. Excellent. Unregistered Hypercam 2, which is a hilarious username, I love it, says, came in late, just wanted to say that the sample PDF looks good, got my pledge up, glad to see how well the Kickstarter is going already. Johnny White, you asked a good question, but I'm gonna hit you last because I want to give Matt a chance. Seal and Quell Post said, copyleft licenses can be a pain in the butt. And the question from Johnny, and Matt, you might want to take a break before you do this. Get yourself another glass of water. Do some stretches. Because Johnny asked the big question: what are the broader plans for Mythmere?
Well, the broader plans. I mean, okay. So the immediate broad plans are, you know, develop a computer program for Tome of Adventure Design and keep working on things that are, you know, generally usable accessories. And on the other hand, bring Swords and Wizardry, you know, back up and running to a full set of products that are, you know, currently available in print, so on and so forth. What am I thinking about in general? I mean, really, what I'm looking at a couple of things here. You know, Swords and Wizardry for several years was based, you know, the OSR follows shiny objects from time to time. And so, you know, for a while it was Swords and Wizardry. It's been Old School Essentials for a while. Bet you anything you want that when the Shadowdark books start arriving on people's doorsteps, that you are going to have a big increase in Shadowdark discussion across the internet. Not, it's already happened, obviously, but I think there's going to surge again on Shadowdark. And I'm really just trying to think, there are one thing that is going to happen as a result of this OGL problem with Wizards is that there are going to be more games out there, more licenses, probably more fragmentation. We've seen the OSR fragment a great deal as a result of the changes in social media shifting away from forums into little tiny bits of Facebook where everybody's got a tiny postage stamp sized piece of real estate and is talking there, but there's not very much coordination. Ever since Google Plus went away, Google Plus provided a level of interaction between those small sites that did hold everything together in a certain organizing principle. What I'm really looking for is the question of what can be done to continue the creative drive of the OSR in general. Here, mainly just talking about the open-ended rule sets like the ones in OD&D, OSE, BX, the original games, of course, you know, the first edition AD&D, is how to keep that creative drive for those communities moving as the number of games and rule sets in that community continues to get larger and larger, and many of them will have a brand name on it, like, you know, OSE, that is not necessarily easily connected by someone who's running into it for the first time, may not know that OSE means Moldvay Basic Dungeons and Dragons, and that means it is also going to be compatible with things that are labeled BX coming from Pacesetter Games, and that means it's going to be probably usable almost without any difficulty by anything that was done for BECME D&D or by anything that is done for basic fantasy role-playing game, BFRPG, is how to keep all those dots connected as the galaxy continues to get larger and larger. Because, like I said, I think we are going to see a very big creative surge in the OSR and in the 5th edition communities. And my larger focus, of course, is the OSR, but I think something pretty much identical is going to happen in those two communities. So whenever I say OSR, you can also read 5th edition third-party publishers. I think there's going to be a very big creative surge, and the question is how to keep that in front of the gamers who do not follow necessarily every single minute of the developing news or every single press release from a publisher. It's getting harder and harder especially for a person who's new in the OSR. You've got no idea what's going on out there. But even for somebody who only marginally follows what's going on, is how can you get a handle on the overall creative work that's being done for those games without having it completely just blast apart into the universe, and nobody realized that all of these various stars that are out there are actually connected. So that if there's the really, really broad brushstroke answer in terms of what the plan is. The plan is to try and figure out some way of doing that and community building in the OSR, and so far I haven't figured out how to do it. So if anyone has any answers, I mean, perhaps this can be solved, right here, right now on Bill's chat. Somebody's about to type something into the chat room that is the answer. If you have something that you think is the answer, give it a shot, because maybe it is. I don't know.
Well, rather serendipitously, Vile Necromancer hit on this, and I starred this, and so it set it off aside a few minutes ago, but I think it fits very well. So big props to Vile for this. He says, get more younger folk involved with the OSR. That would be a start. I agree. That's definitely a good broad-based place to get going. So kudos to you for kind of starting us off there.
They're definitely out there, and there are a lot of young people who are pretty prominent. I mean, you've got Keelan Halverson, you've got Ben Barsh, you've got that other person whose name completely slipped my mind because I am not a young person and I am an old person, and that means that names slip my mind. But that third person, them too.
Yeah, definitely. I just have to thank Uncle Brat. Thank you so much. You need a new invite to the Discord server. So there it is, linked. Thank you for that, super Uncle Brat. I really appreciate that. We'll let's see. But I mean, as far as getting people in, let's hear it. Mark Hyde backing up Vile there. Getting younger people involved is key, but how, when they're wedded to spoon-fed rules and an online ecosystem for play? Well, let me tell you something, and I don't want to put you on the spot, Vile Necromancer, but I'm going to get you on a live stream, because let me tell you something, fans, and Matt, and I know you're a fan, Matt, I'm not standing, you know what I'm saying. Anyway, there's a young man, and I mean a young man, I have t-shirts older than Vile Necromancer, who goes to his school and runs multiple first edition and original D&D games, and Swords and Wizardry and Osric, and he's got it there. And he has the right positive attitude of embracing the older older versions, It's a hard sell. But I found that, like, if you go to an event, if you go to a comic shop, if you just grab, Uncle Brat's buying my eggs for the month. Thank you very much for that one, Uncle Brat. But I think he just wants to see his name stay up on the Supers bar. But if you go to events, if you go to conventions, whether you take Swords and Wizardry, a pod copy of OD, don't take your actual original OD&D books to a con. Just don't. Trust me. Nothing bad has ever happened to mine, but it's come slightly close. So take your copy of Swords and Wizardry and sit down and say, hey, let's play. Especially at a con, people are always looking for stuff to do. And if you get one person, then it's a geometric increase. If you get two people, it's exponential. If they each get two people, and so on and etc. And I know on the face of it, it sounds ridiculous, and it sounds like I'm being too reductive, but it really is that simple. But one thing is, you can't be cloistered, and you can't gatekeep so hard that people just think, regardless of your actual age, that you're just some hard-headed old grognard and you don't want anybody but your drinking buddies sitting at the table. You see that person with a stack of 5e stuff? Ask them if they want to sit down and play D&D. Don't say, hey, why don't you give up on all that new crap and play it the way it should be played, like Gary played in his base. Just offer him a good D&D game. I have never had anyone walk away from a table at a con, at an in-store event, or at my house, and it was their first time playing D&D, classic D&D, saying, that sucked. I'm sorry that I spent my time doing this. I wish I'd... No, that's never happened. I've always made happier gamers. At the very least, they appreciate what it was like, and they might sit down at my table again the next time I run into them.
Yeah, I mean, one thing to remember is that the older games that we like they're good enough to stand on their own without a lecture.
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely the truth. It's absolutely the truth. Tommy dialing back the edition wars. Let me tell you, I'm embarrassed to admit this, but this is true. If I had spent from 1998 on Usenet until, I don't know, 2014, actually writing instead of edition warring, I would be the most prolific RPG author in history. If every one of those idiotic things I wrote on forums and so on was actually put to D&D adventures, out of a stack of modules taller than me published. Mm-hmm. And that's a cautionary tale. You guys, you shouldn't either. Just be positive about it. Don't pitch it as the right way to play D&D. Just pitch it as a fun way to play D&D. I mean, I never played Dungeon Crawl Classics until some guy walked up to me and said, hey, you want to come and play Dungeon Crawl Classics at GaryCon? 2 hours later, I was dead because a zombie shot me with a flamethrower. It was awesome. It was great. And that's the vibe. You got to keep going forward. You got to be positive about things, man. You got to be positive. I think that's your first step, is just present it in a positive way. I got a few comments here. Bill Ermenheiser. Did I say that right? Emma Heiser, excuse me. I have these. Yes, Bill Emma Heiser says, congrats, Matt, on the new Swords and Wizardry Kickstarter. Can't wait to get the new hardback book. Zach Doherty says, as someone such as myself new to OD&D and variants, are there any particularly foundational modules you can recommend to someone new to Swords and Wizardry Complete? I'll let Matt answer, but I'm just going to go ahead and say Pod Caverns of the Sinister Shroom.
Well, Bill's picking one that I wrote, so that's, you probably jumped in there. Actually, Bill, you're probably better if the question is about the stuff that's real OD&D or from back in the day. Bill is probably better than I am at listing out what the greatest, older modules are and for what purpose. Because I think you always got to ask, the question of is one thing better than another is often answered by what's your purpose in that, because B2 is not B2, which keep on the Borderlands, contains almost no independent creative elements to it, and yet is one of the best introductory modules, I think, of all time, largely because it doesn't go too far outside because it's introductory. And it's just got a great structure and so on and so forth. But there's nothing in there that's wildly creative. Caverns of Thracia is often said to have some of the best map design in it. And I don't know, and some of the stuff. The question is it available right now? Some of the stuff is actually back in print and can be gotten. If you can get a copy of Caverns of Thracia, I've heard and agree largely that those are the best design maps. Although I'm very fond of the ones in B1 in Search of the Unknown, which is one of the other TSR introductory modules. It was the one that came before B2, and is, I think, a wonder. The top level, actually, the second level is not all that great, but the top level of that is a brilliantly designed dungeon map for old school type exploration, as opposed to in the newer school stuff. You tend to have, it doesn't focus so much on long corridors and stuff like that, simply because it's not being approached as a strategic battleground that you're going to explore and fight your way through, and want to know the different ways that you could get around other things and so on. But B1, I think the top level map is definitely one to look at. What else, Bill? Either new or old. So, I mean, Pod Caverns is good. I also wrote one called Spire of Iron and Crystal, which is good. And I think we've got the PDF for that one on sale at mythmeregames.com. Not 100% certain, but if not, that'll be something that we get out and put out there in terms of the stuff that I've done that I'm fond of.
If you snag a PDF copy of Supplement 2 Blackmore, Temple of the Frog is a fine old school module.
Absolutely as old school as you can get. There's not even a grid on the map, but it really, and it looks, the first time you look at the Temple of the Frog, you think, this is bizarre. They're going to get swarmed. How is this even possible? But when you look deeper into the design of it, it's very, very good module.
Yeah.
And it's in the actual rule book itself.
Gosh, let's see. B4, The Lost City is a good one. We did a deep dive for a few episodes on B4, and it's a new favorite of mine. I'm going to be adapting that bad boy to AD&D. That is
great module.
Village of Hamlet. You just can't go wrong going and punching Lareth in the face. If you want to ratchet up the levels, and guys, all of these, a good GM, you're gonna take the modules and you're gonna make them fit your rules. Okay, so if I'm talking about something that's like, well, you're talking about AD&D modules, Bill. We're talking about Swords and Wizardry. That's more OD&D. Trust me.
Yeah, they're all 99.9% compatible.
Exactly. So, and I haven't mentioned B2 simply because you guys have all been talking about B2 in the chat, and
have they really?
And B2 is so much my favorite AD&D module, or favorite D&D module rather, that I would occupy the back half of the stream just singing its praises. So you know why B2 is so great, guys. But the A series, you had so many great authors working on that. Tom Mulday, Dave Cook, Al Hammock, who else was in there? But the A series is just, it is Dungeons and Dragons at its deadliest, and I really recommend it. White Plume Mountain. I mean, come on, White Plume Mountain is so much fun. Yeah. Now, this one is going to be a little controversial. It does take some work to make work, but Palace of the Silver Princess. If you want something a little different, you want something that's a little not what your group would be used to, and if you want a horror, like a creepy gothic horror angle, but you don't want to go full Ravenloft, don't go full Ravenloft. Then throw them at Castle Amber X2. And those are just off the top of my head. Rachel says, start the players in Tomb of Horrors. What's not to love about that?
Start and end.
Yeah, start and end. Hey, I've always maintained that you could take I'd say a middle and 6th, 7th level party of experienced players, not experienced characters, because obviously that's not experienced characters, experienced players, and make it out of Tomb of Horrors alive. Experienced players who know that the entire module is do not touch. So, Rachel says, learn to enjoy your character's death. This dungeon master is my kind of scum, ruthless and inventive. But yeah, those are just a few off the top of my head. And there's more good stuff coming out every year. All right. From the OSR. There's good stuff coming out. I'm sorry?
Too fast to keep up with.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. Stuff is just
Veins of the Earth was super creative. What's the one? What's the one with the weird name? It's actually quite old at this point. I think it's probably like 88 years old. I'll remember. I'll say it if I come up with.
Sure.
Anomalous underground.
ASE, anomalous subsurface environment.
Right. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. Now I was lucky enough here, shameless plug, just one, because it was fun, and two, because they're swell people. But if you're looking for a good low-level module, the Till Death Do Us Part by Heidi and Eric Gygax. That's a lot of fun. You can knock it out in an evening, but they're expanding it, and it's going to get bigger and more expanded and deadlier. So if you want something that's got more meat on it, when they drop out the more expanded one, that's a recommend for me on that one. That's a newer one. Zach has a question here. Thank you, Zach. First of all, I wanted to just real quick to Seal and Quell. I'm so glad Swords and Wizardry was released in German language instead of OSE, which is so damn dry. But Zach says, can Matt talk a bit about the modules offered in the Kickstarter and the authors behind them?
Yes, and actually the last time that I was on Bill's show, we talked quite a while about James Spahn, who is the author of Legacy of Blackscale Lagoon, and so let's get to him next. The solo adventure Doom of Malachar is written by Ben Barsh, who is he's probably in his late 20s now, but he grew up going to North Texas Con after North Texas Con after North Texas Con, and so he's been hanging out with the likes, grognards, the likes of Tim Kask, and ever since he was knee high to a grasshopper, and he works with his dad, Bill Barsh, Pacesetter Games. They've been publishing things for many years, all of it very old school. They understand the way that that old school stuff works, and what Ben is working on, and he's done a couple of these before, although I think he wrote them for the BX rule system. He may have done one that was usable with the Swords and Wizardry system, but he's playing around with solo modules. So, and by solo meaning not two people playing at the table, but just one, and then the book is the referee. So it's kind of like the whole choose your own path adventure. There's the trademark rule, so there's a lot of different substitutes for the last word in the whole choose your own thing, but that's the way that it operates, and then you resolve combats or so on and so forth using the Swords and Wizardry rules. But it's basically like one of the books where if you do this, then turn to page number so and so, only it's numbered paragraphs, so that it's not a bazillion page book. But so that's how that one works. And just briefly, that is you've got a wizard who made a bad deal and has ended up being partly, but not entirely, transformed into a demon. And the reason that it's only partial is that at the last minute he realized that this book that he had gotten was going to steal his soul, and so he segmented off parts of it. And this is based on Ben's description of it, so I may be getting it slightly wrong here because I haven't actually seen the finished manuscript yet. But so the little parts of his soul hidden away, and then your character, which is just the one character, is pursuing the trail of these, sort of quasi artifacts, to either prevent the full transformation of the guy into the demon, or to destroy him, or and that varies a little bit depending on the plot as it develops going through the book. But that's the basic thing. And so there are various locations and leads to follow up in order to pursue these safeguard bits of the guy's soul that he's put out there. And so that's the solo adventure. And then Legacy of Blackscale Lagoon. James Spahn has been doing Swords and Wizardry stuff for many, many years. He wrote the White Star rule system, which is basically a Star Wars interpretation of Swords and Wizardry for science fiction gaming. He's done a lot of things for White Box Swords and Wizardry, which is just the first 3 books of the original set. So it's a smaller rule set than Swords and Wizardry Complete. And he's published a game called Hero's Journey, which is fairly deeply rooted in a lot of the Swords and Wizardry rules, but it takes it in a different direction because he's a Tolkien scholar. He's written actually for the One Ring RPG. He's written for the Star Wars RPG. He's written for many, many systems. And he and I were talking, and I was like, okay, well, let's get an introductory module. And really, to me, and so sorry to go back to B2, although it does sound like the chat room, really likes B2, so I'm not stepping on anyone's toes here. But I was like, look, that's for me the model of how an introductory adventure should work, because it's introductory, and what you get there is your home base, and here's how you talk to NPCs. And then you've got a little sandbox area where you can go and follow up on the rumors or the information that you get from those NPCs in the home base. And you can go, and there you learn you can go any direction that you want to, and you can do anything that you want to. And if you go into the wrong place, that's on you. And then the third thing that it's got, in addition to the little layers that are out there in the sandbox, is a dungeon adventure where you can learn how to do dungeon adventuring and get down the basic principles of dungeon adventuring in something that's large enough to explore, but not so large that it ends up stealing the thunder from the whole campaign, because if they decide they want to go do something else, then they can move on to the next thing. And so that was what I told James. I wanted him that I wanted a structure that was like B2. And he said, well, okay, so but how about let's do it in a swamp or something like that, so that you get something that will be interesting. I mean, granted, swamps have been done plenty, but there are a lot fewer of them than there are, the rolling hills sort of thing, and it's a different set of monsters. So that was when he decided that he would develop it into a marsh. And so that is the basic organizing principle behind Legacy of Blackscale Lagoon. And there are a couple of mysteries and several crisscrosses in the sandbox, where you can out of nowhere, just because you went to this particular place, you can discover something that might be very useful someplace else. And so that's how that one is done. So those are the 2 modules. One of them, the solo module written by Ben Barsh, and the other one, Legacy of Blackscale Lagoon, written by a very long time industry veteran, James Spahn.
Excellent. By the way, Del Tiegler just dropped this in the chat. Your Kickstarter.
Tigler. I have the Tigler.
The Tigler. Your Kickstarter just topped 71 grand, 71
nice.
So there you go. It's that Dungeon Delver effect. It happens.
Yeah, that means we brought in almost $1,000 while we were here talking in this stream. So I bet you a lot of that came from the people in the chat room. So thank you very much, everybody who's watching.
Yeah. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. let's celebrate it with super chats, everybody. I'm kidding.
Hey, I tried to give people an accurate when I did the update to the Kickstarter, and I don't think I said you were a long-winded blowhard, but it was something like that. Well, I tried to give people a very accurate description because there are very different styles of YouTubing out there, and yours is the very discursive, conversational, non-scripted, talking out loud and reminding people, hey, I make money off of this. It's important to throw some money into the chat, into the super chat every once in a while, as opposed to something that's a lot more
financially secure.
Well, like I was going to say that I had kind of an artist studio vibe was one of the things that I tried to get when I was doing my YouTube channel way back when, and so and there's different styles, and so I tried to give people an idea of this is what you're watching when you come in, because for some people it's ideal, and for some people they're like, oh, that would be terrible, I don't like that sort of YouTube. So just to direct the people who will like to watch shows like this and who will like to put money into the super chat for you in $5 increments for here's a cup of coffee for you, Bill, those people will enjoy this sort of holy shit.
I don't get it either.
$5 increments are also okay for those who are thinking about
they're entirely okay.
Thank you very much, Uncle Brat. We are eventually going to be able to get Bill to come over to North Texas so that we can hang out at North Texas.
Thank you, Rachel.
Actually, I think the hotel. I think they've opened up another hotel, but they actually sold out the hotel for North Texas. So that's that's a little hitch in the plan of getting you down there. But I think they found another one that they're going to bus people back and forth.
Excellent. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Zach. Thank you all for the supers. I'm embarrassed. Thank you so much, though. Thank you all. And as far as my format goes, I mean, for anybody who's not who's not familiar with this, whether if you just came over, I basically, when you were a kid, like if you're of a younger set, do you ever go, gosh, I wish I could like have my own TV station and I could run whatever I want? That's what I do here, right? It's Bill's TV Fun House, supported by viewers like you. So thank you all for your continued support. Whether you're just coming in to hear Zach, Matt talk. I know. I'm sorry. I'm watching.
You're reading names.
I saw Zach's name like zing up the screen 5 times. Whether it's whether you're coming to listen to Matt or you come to listen to me periodically, thank you. And we are at 4,333 subs on the YouTube channel. So thank you all. If you're not already subscribed, please consider clicking that subscribe button.
And is that also an increase over the course of this one video on the decimal behind the number of subscribers you got?
It was it sat in like the 43 teens. Not even that. No, actually it was like 4307 exactly a week ago. And I started doing like the YouTube shorts that are supposed to be so good for your channel metrics. And I saw like my subs dip to like 4304, 4303. And then I got back and I dropped a couple of videos and they bumped up. And then you announced today and there it just went up another one. So 4334. So yeah, between your announcement and today, it's bumped up like 20 subs. So the Matt Finch effect, 4335. We're here to talk to Matt, not to talk about my bottom line. Del, thank you so much. Thank you, Rachel, Zach. No, when I started reporting on Wizards of the Coast madness back in January, it's like I started the day off. I had 1,500 subs, and I was like, oh, maybe by 2024 I'll have 2,000 subs. Wizards of the Coast does their thing. I do one of my 10-minute ranty videos, and I came in and sat down, and I'm not kidding you, the the subscriber count on my YouTube channel started going like a car's trip odometer. It literally just started turning over and over. And some of those videos netted like 300-400 subs each. So it's been crazy. And you guys, thank you for subscribing. Are now we're at 4335. So thank you all very much. But anyway, back to Matt. Something I want to ask you about, Matt. First of all, the art in the Swords and Wizardry stuff is very good. It's excellent. Thank you.
The portion that we sent out in the sample, I think people are mainly seeing Del Tigler's stuff because we sent out the character portions. We've got some stuff from Alla Fedorova is in there as well. Have you met Alla, Bill?
No, I don't think so.
Anyway, so she's got some stuff in there. So yeah, there is some new art. There's also a fair amount of James Shields. Some of it's actually stock art in there. But the reason that I want to mention James Shields, who is usually seen as J.E. Shields on there, is that he is doing a zine that's coming up in just a few days. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to type his name into the.
You can shoot me in private chat like a link and then I can paste it in. Unfortunately,
I managed to get it in there. So yeah, J.E. Shields, and he's doing a zine of some kind, and he is also a very sort of old school style artist, and so people may want to go and take a look at that. And I can't remember the name of the thing, but I think it's launching Friday. So anyway, that's out there, and that's something I would encourage people to do because he's doing a zine of monsters. And then when Del Tigler actually manages to get his head past all of the freelance commissions that are coming at him and do something and put it out there, we'll back that as well. So Del, you're kind of on the hook here because you do enough art, and then people start expecting you to publish your own thing.
And I just want to put this up because the chat's kind of moving fast. But InStim says the discussion of the adventures with a Kickstarter sold me, upgraded to all in.
Great, awesome.
But so I want to qualify what I'm saying with the art is magnificent. The art is great. Did you ever have any inclination to talking to Errol or Darlene or Dave LaForce or anybody like that about doing any art too?
Well, Errol did one of the covers. One of the print-on-demand covers is Errol. Even among Errol's fans, though, there are a lot of people who aren't fond of that particular Errol Otis piece that he did for us. So we didn't want to force anybody to get it. One of the things about Errol's work is that your opinion of it improves the more times that you see it, and it sort of gets under your skin and takes over your brain. I remember the first time that I saw the Fiend Folio cover, I was not impressed by that Githyanki, and now it's absolutely classic. I love it. But we didn't want to force anybody who didn't like that particular Errol Otis piece to get it. So that's why we've got the alternate print-on-demand cover. There's a green one that looks a lot like the blue cover that's on the offset one, so that if somebody doesn't like, because the monster in the thing looks a lot more science fiction-y than most people really expect in a fantasy game, and some people think it's kind of genre breaking to have that in there. But so yeah, I mean, obviously we did talk to Errol. Who were the other ones that you were meant? I don't usually try and go back to get artists of name from the past, partly because there are a lot of publishers who do deliberately do that in order to get that art, new art from the older artists. I tend to work with artists who stylistically create the kind of feel that I like to get when I am playing. And so when you look at Del's work, it's just he tends to visualize things in the same kind of way that I do, of wow, this is a really cool thing. All I said was for the picture of the assassin. I was like, we need to have a picture of an assassin, and maybe he's running away from the scene of a crime. And what Dell comes up with is this massive walking away from explosions, exploding tower behind the assassin. Is just that's the kind of way that I think about it. And so and that's generally how I tend to choose artists. And the other thing about artists, which anyone who hasn't published, you don't realize, it has a lot to do with their availability. Because usually the artist has a backlog of work that they're working on. They may or may not be available at the particular time when you, the publisher, have a window of maybe only 1 month during which you want to get something done, and if they don't happen to be free. And so that's why you see people working with there are two reasons why you work with multiple artists. Number one is simply because one artist cannot finish all the art for one book. You have to have multiple artists working on it to get the thing done. And the other thing is just that somebody that you've worked with on your last project may not happen to be available for work on the next one. So there's my dump on in terms of working with artists and how that goes. I'm not one of the people who deliberately tries for a consciously retro feel in the modules. The things that we do tend to have a retro feel, but that's mainly just coincidental. It's the artists that we like, tend to create that kind of a look, but we're not deliberately trying to create that kind of a look.
Right on. Well said. We got a few questions here. Poe, once again, asking, any chance we see a stretch goal for the offset print of the pod cover?
Okay. If the question is, okay. So the question is, will we see an offset print of the Aerolotus art? And that's just cost prohibitive, because the way that you're able to get books out at a reasonable price is by doing the largest print run that you can possibly do, and that lowers the unit cost of the book, which is why we're able to sell it for $35 when I think most people would be charging $40 for this book at this point. And if you do a second run, then both of those two runs will be half the size. So we had to decide one or the other, and we decided to go with something that matched up with the cover that we had done with Tome of Adventure Design. And I really love the sigil that Dell Tigler did on the front of that. So no, that there probably won't ever be an offset print run of that. That'll be a print on demand thing.
Right on.
If the question was the other way around, though, the answer is no. We're not going to do a POD of the blue cover, because we want to make sure that we have a different POD cover than we do an offset print cover, because eventually people are going to be selling them on Amazon, and we don't want to have people who are selling a glue bound copy at the price of a stitch binding. So
right on. Clanner Jake says, are they going to, I'm assuming you, going to do any folio style stuff? And he capitalized folio, so I'm not sure if you're referring specifically to, say, the Fiend folio or folio in a collection of art.
There's also a zine called the Folio. So we don't know, because your question could have been three different things. Are we ever going to do any zine? Let me run with the question of, are we going to do any zine type content? Right now we don't have any of that planned. I would kind of love to get a bunch of authors. I mean, what we did a long time ago, and we had a Swords and Wizardry forum back in the day, which is gone now, but we had a lot of people working on amateur products putting together that they were organizing on the forums. I would love to see more of that type of thing, alarums and excursions type of stuff. But we don't currently have plans to try and do zines, and we have a lot of good friends who do really good zine type material. There's all the guys at the IPU. So, Jim Wampler's Scientific Barbarian, Levi Combs with the Planet X stuff that he's doing, Dungeon Malarkey, which I think might even be on Kickstarter right now. If it is Dungeon Malarkey, take a look at that because it'll be good. All of the stuff that Levi does is great. Skeeter Green. There's kind of a niche for zines, because the nice thing about a zine is, number one, you can, it's a small page count, and it is, usually digest size is usually the way they do it. I don't think that Jim Wampler does it in digest size. Silver Bullet, another zine sort of approach that, that's a kind of bite-sized product that if you are a publisher and you don't have a whole lot of resources, you can still nail a zine and hit it out of the park with great content. And it's a small enough number of pages that then you can just turn around and go back and do it again and again. That's something that we've got a lot of people that we support doing that. We don't really have plans to do a zine at this point in time. We've already got as much as we can handle in terms of our Kickstarter schedule, just given the the app for Tome of Adventure Design, the Unearthed Arcana type book for the next Kickstarter, the monster book for the next Kickstarter. We've got plenty to do just to meet the demand for the game itself.
Right on. Will says, if Knoxbell came back, I sure wouldn't complain. Let's see, which would be a first for Will, not complaining about things. But I gotta dig at you. But this is kind of a general statement from Will, one that I can kind of answer with a lowercase a. I suspect Errol didn't get paid for the recent action figures based on his Red Dress Sorceress. The Gith Yankee was actually not Errol Otis, I don't think. But as far as the art, no, I can almost
guarantee. Fiend Folio?
Yeah, no, Fiend Folio is not Errol. Fiend Folio is one of the UK artists did that, but Emmanuel. I've got mine here.
Look at the back cover. Well, my Fiend Folio is good and lost. Might be in the closet.
Let me see. And of course, my specs. Oh no, here they are. Okay, so we're gonna settle this right now. Yeah, the Gith Yankee are Emmanuel. But anyway, I've said this before because it's true.
Deities and Demigods is what I was thinking of. Never. No, you're right. You're absolutely right. But I was thinking of an entirely different cover. But I said Gith Yankee because I knew it was a Gith Yankee on the cover I was talking about. But no, I was thinking about Deities and Demigods. My bad.
Right, but Errol did do some.
That was why I said look on the back cover. That's where there's the thing that's unmistakably Errol Otis. So. Right,
but our artists getting paid for later stuff, particularly, old school artists in D&D, absolutely not. Action figures, toys, lunchboxes, T-shirts, posters, miniatures, what have you. This late in the game, they would never see a dime of it. I mean, just none of it. That just doesn't happen. It was done on hire. And that's it. So there's the response comment to your statement, Will. Let's see.
Cowboy Quick.
Yeah, Rachel helping me pick that out there. Some of Otis' best stuff is Cthulhu Mythos and Deities and Demigods. So it's a shame it wasn't in all the. Yeah, and that's. We'll get Jim Ward back on the show. I ran into Jim at Gary Con, and he wants to come back on the show. A lot of other creators do too, which is going to be very cool. Going into the back half of the year, we're going to have a lot of good guests. But not the least of which will be Matt again. Not that I'm saying he's going away now, but we'll get the straight dope from Jim. Again, if it doesn't anger him up too much talking about that, but there was no reason for the Rick and Cthulhu stuff to go away.
It's going to anger him up talking about that.
It's going to anger him up talking about it. And it's not like it irks him that the Blooms took it away. The stupid rumors and urban legends that people have started about why it went away makes him angrier than that, because it's like, ooh, TSR got sued. No, they didn't.
He is not in good enough health for you to get him on this show and piss him off, man.
Yeah, I'm not going to. I'm gonna. I will mute you all in chat if I have to keep Jim from.
Oh, funny, Jim. Nobody in the chat's saying anything at all.
Oh, they're all listening attentively, Jim. Aren't you, chat?
Okay, we had a question about knock. It's talking about something that's like knock, but realize this knock comes from. They called me and asked me after I had quit doing knock spell, but I did knock before knock ever came out and quit because it was so much work to edit and put together a magazine format. But that's something, I'm fully aware both of the demand for it, because I think it's really, really cool to get stuff like that, and also the difficulty of putting something like that together. So, this is just the question of, something that's like knock for Swords and Wizardry would be cool. My feeling on magazines is that I like to see them. You usually do have to pick one rule set because you've got to do stats, for the monsters. So you have to have one, rule set. But I like for magazines and zines and for that kind of thing to be as. You can't quite go all the way system neutral, but there's enough play in the various OSR games to do something that's an OSR zine, and anybody who's looking at it, they'll see how to make it work. But to make it general as possible, for a magazine type of thing is usually the way it's hard enough to pay for a publication as a publisher. If you're talking to multiple OSR rule sets, it's really hard if you're talking only one.
And by the way, I should point out, if PDFs are your jam, like getting PDFs and then printing them out or otherwise binding them yourselves, there's a pretty damn good adventure in at least one of those issues of Knockspell that you might check out. And involves
Giants.
Yeah, something like that.
One written by your friendly host. That one.
That's right. That's your darn tootin'. Your darn tootin'. So you might pick that up, but get them all. Get them all. Fill out your bookshelf, be it virtual or physical, with copies of Knockspell. Because I've said this before, and I got a little choked up about this. Matt has saved my bacon twice by publishing stuff I've written. And both times it was literally like action movie levels of leaping out and grabbing my hand before I fell off a cliff. So thank you again for publishing What the Cloud Giant Wanted, and for getting, of course, The Lost Crypt published, which is a different discussion for a different day. But thank you again, Matt, for rolling the dice on my behalf. I certainly appreciate it. But so we've got to. You got about 15 more minutes, and you're right, Matt, or you got to go?
No, we can keep going. Yeah, another 15 minutes. We'll cut it off at what's 9 o'clock my time, and it was like 10 o'clock your time. So yeah. So let's roll with some trivia here. Some trivial stuff, not trivia like I'm gonna ask you or the audience a bunch of ridiculous questions. But before we get into that, I want to make sure that I'm not missing. Oh, and right there, Mage's Musings says, let me bring this up. There's no option for just a PDF of the adventures on Kickstarter. Is that deliberate? No option for just the PDFs of the
Yeah, right there.
Oh yeah. No, it's not. It's not really deliberate. Yeah, right. That's true. There wouldn't digital combination pack. You got to get the rule book. Yeah, no, it's not deliberate on there. It's just we do try and keep. Here's one of the difficulties in designing a Kickstarter is just that when you get over a certain number of tiers, you start getting people walking into the Kickstarter, seeing all of the different choices over there in that tier column and walking away. And so we try and keep the number of tiers as low as we possibly can and cover everything. And that's just one that I completely spaced, that somebody might want to get PDFs of the modules, but not of the rule set. Partly just because the rule set PDF is so cheap. It's actually at $5 for the rule book. It's actually less expensive than the PDF of the adventure, because we're trying to get the rule set out there, and so that's just hadn't occurred to me that would be an issue, but it was accidental.
Well, there you go. Question asked, question answered. So my co-host Kyle, he's on the show on Wednesdays, of course, places in order of importance at the game table: people, snacks, setting, and system. What do you think of that order?
People,
snacks, setting, system.
People, setting, snacks, system.
Okay, so the snacks are a little less important to Matt, Kyle. So I'm sure he'll have some sharp words about that. But now it's funny. I would have thought that this would have been like classical music or the soundtrack from Ben-Hur. But I asked Gary once, like, what music at the table when gaming, and he said, I don't. I find it distracting, and gosh darn it, if that didn't do it to me too, that I've gotten to the point where music is distraction. But for you, music or no music, and if yes, then what?
No music. It's a distraction to me too.
Right on.
Fortunately, you let me know ahead of time that I was going to be agreeing with Gary, because that's usually a safe position on most things. It really is. Gary managed to be a little controversial himself sometimes, but at least I won't be torched and pitchforked by the old school crowd if I know that I'm agreeing with Gary. But no, yeah, music's a distraction for me too. I've never been able to in something like Call of Cthulhu, I can get it, and with in that game I don't have a problem with music. So I don't know if it's like a different mental process going on with Call of Cthulhu, or whether it's just the elder being in my head that's actually reaching out an antenna and communicating with the blind pipers of Azathoth. But with D&D I can't do it. It really does distract me.
Yeah, and I mean, unfortunately, like we do live stream shows, I can't play any music at all. Like,
right, yeah.
I can't do like, just play some classical music. Well, who's it recorded by? I mean, if I can go out and get a truly generic, but if I go out,
you get yourself a recorder and play Hot Cross Buns, sir. That is something that you can do.
I can and I should. It's not as bad on YouTube as it is on Twitch, because if you go on Twitch and you do that recorder trick and you play like the first half of, say, Stairway to Heaven, their AI will shut you down. It will stop you. They will stop your live stream and suspend your channel if you do something like that on Twitch. It's crazy. In fact, Metallica did a live concert on Twitch.
And they got shut down because they were playing Metallica.
Yeah, exactly. Which I think is just delicious irony.
Yeah.
If anybody deserved it, it was them. YouTube strikes static noise, and that's Clanner points out something different there, but very correct. I don't stream on Facebook anymore because I got a video copyright struck by Facebook for music, and it said it was 1 second long, and it was like 28 minutes into a live stream. 1 second, 28 minutes into a live stream where I played no music. It heard my voice or some ambient noise and said, that's a musical note that matches my internal library. So you're going to have to tell us why that happened. And I said, no, you tell me why it happened. I never got a response. I don't stream on Facebook anymore. Dungeon Minister says, we don't use music sometimes in ambient sound. It's just, because like a song's going to end, right? You might think immigrant song. Oh, that's great for an epic battle. Well, it's 2 minutes and 39 seconds. That's enough time to go around the table once and get everybody's actions. And then say, okay, roll initiative. But, no music, then what's next?
What snacks?
What snacks? I'm asking the important questions, Matt. Come on.
Chips and dip.
Chips and dip. There you go. But a little bit more seriously, I don't think you and I have ever had this discussion. Minis and terrain, minis and battle mat, or just all theater of the mind?
It's definitely not entirely theater of the mind. Usually what I do is, at the very least, a visual map, because mostly what I do now is convention games. I'm not running a home game at the moment. Home game, usually I'll use battle mat, minis, and then I like low to the ground terrain rather than high walls. So I tend not to go with the Dungeon Forge type of thing, but either to use just a couple of Hearst Arts blocks glued on top of one another, and then Tom Tullis and Fat Dragon Games has just come out with a line of 3D printed STL files that follow that same thing. They're very low, only I don't know if they're an inch or a half inch tall, but the issue there being that you can actually see the grid and the minis without a wall getting in the way. You don't have to look over the top, which you pretty much do if you're using something that's got full height 2-inch dungeon, Dwarven Forge or regular type walls. So I usually I use the Hearst Arts ones because the thing is that you can just spin them around easily to match the hallway or whatever it is. And I just keep a small stack of those things. So you get the feel of the walls there. But you're doing but I do use minis to find out who gets hit by the fireball, who's in the line of sight, to help the players remember the tactical stuff. I'm not I'm not an absolutist at all on theater of the mind. I think theater of the mind is most of it, because that's being able to describe something well and grab people's attention is also theater of the mind. But at a certain point in time, you want to know whether or not you actually got hit by the fireball, and so that's the minis, or just to make it clear to the mapper, because I do make the players usually map the dungeon or whatever it is that they're going through, and so it's helpful to have the additional clarity. You're not hitting them with a double whammy of, yes, you've got a map, and oh, by the way, you've got to rely on my vague descriptions of what it is that you're going through, when your character would actually be able to see it. So that helps with the clarity on the mapping.
Yeah, and I think when I go to events, or to be at an in-store comic store kind of event, or at a con or something like that, I do like to roll out a very elaborate table setting minis. I use black cloths for fog of war draped over everything, and then the big reveal. There's one of the lovely pieces my wife has done over there that I can put out on the table. But I also think there's, at least with me, and I noticed this with a lot of 3rd edition, 4th edition players. They're like, oh, okay, so I see I'm this many squares from the demon in the room, right? I'm like, no, it's really just there to look cool. It's yes, for purposes of, did you get zinged by the lightning bolt when it rebounded off the back wall? but by and large, it's just there to look neat and to ooh and ah over and not worry about exact scales. I'm not, when I play chainmail, I'll play chainmail. But when I play D&D, it's a lot faster and looser.
There's not a wrong answer to that either. That's one of those things that falls into the category of there. There's not a wrong answer to whether you use minis.
Oh, yeah, no. And I kid my friends about it all the time, and they kid me back. They're like, oh, the game's starting at 9, so I guess you'll get there around 5 and start setting up. It's horrible, but it's also true. And I mean, that's there. I recently switched. Dwarven Forge still do the classic resin, but in very tiny batches. It's like they'll produce 10 of their classic box sets, and then they sell like that. But they produce their plastic stuff, which I can just drag into oversized totes. I'm not worried about it chipping or anything like that. And if it rubs a little paint off, well, I just dab a little brown paint on it, and on we go. But yeah, setting up with the pieces like I've had here on the show. But I also appreciate the wall height thing, because that can be a little bit, well, you're sitting right there. Can't you see it? No, I can't. Because I'm playing a gnome. It's a miniature that tall against a wall that tall. So no. As you say, there is no right answer for miniatures. When it's not swords and wizardry, what is your game of choice?
Probably either Traveler or Call of Cthulhu.
Excellent.
Depending on the mood. Yeah.
What edition of Call of Cthulhu?
The one that's still got the really funny descriptions of the mental illnesses in it.
That, by the way, listeners, is a trick question because they're all the same.
I thought they were on like edition 7 now of Call of Cthulhu.
Actually, no, I take that back. They changed after 6th edition. They did change, but they're all the same in that the rules stayed the same. I have a 4th edition book that has the various insanities. Where's my 4E book? We ran a 4th edition. Well, we ran a classic Call of Cthulhu game back in October for the month of October on our Friday live stream. That was pretty well received. You guys out there in the audience seemed to enjoy it a good bit. So we're going to do that again this year. Sandy and the rest of the guys over at Chaosium did such a great job with Call of Cthulhu. I love it. I love it to pieces.
Classic Traveler, to the question about which version of Traveler.
I got my first taste of that on the live stream. All these years I've gamed, and I only just played through a very, in my opinion, too brief Classic Traveler campaign, but it was a lot of fun. Hail, Michael Connor, Unbreaded. Good to see you. Speaking of hail, I ran into Ty Beard at Gary Con.
Oh, yeah?
Ty sends his regard and says he'll be in contact.
Yeah, excellent.
So, but
unfortunately, we're still too. Tyler is still far enough away that you can't just visit people and say hello from between Tyler and Houston. It's about 4-hour drive, 3-hour drive. It's a long way.
Yeah. I mean, what's the joke? It took me a day and a half to drive all the way across Texas, and I was still in Texas.
Yeah.
Texas, Florida
at the wide spots, it's like 800 miles across.
Yeah. Florida's a fairly large state vertically. When people tell me, "Oh, I know so and so," do you know so and so? Where do they live? Miami? No, I don't. And there's 23 million of us here in this state, or something like that. So no, I almost certainly don't. But I can guarantee you, if you say, oh, Ty Beard, does he know this guy? No, he most certainly does not. I'm not being rude. He just, as you say, 800 miles across. It's a third of the width of the United States.
I saw a great Facebook thing, and I'm not going to be able to do justice to this, but it was somebody writing about how they were. He says he was a taxi driver in Dublin, and he had some Americans get into the car, and they said to him, oh, you're from Dublin. I'm from Dublin. He said, do you know Seamus Riley? And he says, Dublin is a city with 1 million people in it. The shit of it is that I do know Seamus Riley.
I think you did that justice. I think you absolutely did that justice.
It's even funnier when somebody had written it down, but I'm glad I at least got the joke across.
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious.
That was the shit of it is I do know that bastard Seamus Riley. There was a comment on him too.
You've got the flip side. My wife and I went on our honeymoon to Barbados, and Barbados is a little smaller than the county I live in Central Florida, and the whole nation is divided into parishes, like little tiny states. And according to our tour guide, like there's people who live in one parish on one side of the island, and they'll live their whole lives there without visiting the other parishes. And you're talking about something that's like the size of the Skyrim map. and people literally, they stay in their neighborhoods, because there's a store, there's a bakery, there's a beach 5 feet away from where you live. So
when you already live in a vacation paradise, there's
not a bunch of impetus to go up the road to more of the vacation paradise. So good times. So you are going to be at NTRPG this year.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we're one of the minor sponsors of the con, or donors, or whatever category we are. Definitely, encourage anybody who wants to go to a con that is almost exclusively focused on the pre-2000 versions of D&D, pre-2000 games, out of print games, the old school, however you think about it. That is the convention for absolutely focusing on that kind of thing.
So there you go, guys. If you want to jump into a great old school con, there's your chance. It's coming up just in front of us over there in good old Texas, the Lone Star State. Now, will you be at Gary Con next year, do you think?
I would imagine so, yes. We're the only reason that we skipped Game Hole and Gary Con this time around is because we moved to Texas, which it used to be that we could drive to both of those conventions, and all of a sudden it meant flying to those conventions. And we only have the one book, Tome of Adventure Design. We will obviously have the Swords and Wizardry books by that point. That's enough to actually do a booth, even if, with the limited product. So we basically skipped out on one convention cycle on the Midwestern conventions, but we imagine we'll be back. So
good. I if I'm able to make it, which I don't. I mean, who knows? I'd love to see you there. We do a little virtual con. Do you ever hit virtual cons?
No, but I'm listening.
Well, we do a little thing around here, the Great Underground Online Gaming Convention, the GWOC. It is called
Florida Man names a gaming convention.
And we call it the GWOC. That's darn right. We have merch and everything. We have these lovely pint glasses and t-shirts and coffee mugs and the whole deal done by the Dungeon Minister. That's coming up in June. If you're free in June and you want to swing by the GWOC, it's free.
Well, when in June? Because that's also when North Texas is.
When is North Texas? And I won't do it.
Very, very early June.
Okay, we'll probably do the GWOC very late in June then.
Okay, well, in that case, we'll let me know what it is that we need to do in order to be at an online con, and we'll
there you go. We'll definitely get we'll get you in. I'll find you a table. It'll be awesome for the price. It's worth it. But anyway, any further questions from you folks in the chat? You are some of my favorite people in the chat. Any questions? Any questions? Because this is your last chance until Matt's on next time. Because you're going to come back again, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh, good.
Sorry, I was reading the comments. So, yeah.
That's fine. That once the chat gets moving, it can go pretty fast.
I mean, I just tuned in yesterday to see, what was, going on in your show yesterday, which you looked thrashed, man. You need to get a night's sleep before you do these things, because yesterday it looked like you were hurting.
Wait till I do the 24-hour live stream, Matt. That's coming in April. I'm gonna do a 24-hour live stream to celebrate the 3rd year of the show's existence and the last few minutes of my existence. If I actually sit up
the last 24 hours of my existence.
The last 24 hours of my life broadcast on the internet. But yeah, I was a little tired after Gary Con, but well, that's awesome.
So let me jump in and answer Rachel's and Joshua's questions.
Okay. You guys are getting
Rachel's asking any hope of getting any DMing Swords and Wizardry software. I don't think so. We may add some stuff to VTTs. So if we're talking about virtual tabletop type of stuff, yes. If we're talking about something that is more DM resources, that we are going to be doing Tome of Adventure Design in a computer app. So if that's the question, then yes. But specifically Swords and Wizardry, there's not anything that's planned along those lines. And then the question: will the new Swords and Wizardry be black and white or color? It's black and white interior, and we're probably going to stick with the black and white line art type of look on that. So.
Okay, well, more questions are coming in, so I guess we got to answer this one. Why doesn't S&W include any description of races? This changed for the revised edition.
Well, I mean, we're not using the term race. We are using the term ancestry, just because the term race is changing and shifting. Although I'm not sure if that's because we only sent the character section and not the whole how to play section. It may just be that the descriptions of the races fell outside of the pages that we were doing. Not sure. And
Marifati wants to know, do you have a merch store?
Not yet. We probably will do some t-shirts or something like that, though, because everybody likes t-shirts. Some people like coffee cups. We'll probably do a very limited bit of merch, but at the moment, no, we don't.
Pint glasses. Get me a pint glass, Matt. Oh gosh. So does that mean there will be dual ancestry builds? Clanner Jake wants to know.
Well, there'll be dual class builds.
Oh, there you go.
Not dual ancestry.
Have you seen Honor Amongst Thieves? Was it good, bad?
I said early in the thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Liked the movie. It was a little more Forgotten Realms than Greyhawk. I do tend to prefer the sort of Greyhawk feel to my D&D, but Forgotten Realms is just fine, and it's a Forgotten Realms movie. So yeah, and there was nothing wrong with it. It's not going to make cinematic history, but there's nothing wrong with that movie.
Well, there we go, guys. I think we're going to wrap up so Matt can go and not have to put up with my silliness anymore, but you guys have to put up with my silliness. Tomorrow night, we will be back. We will be streaming. And we'll have a guest on in the first half of the show. Hopefully, Sapphire can be here and give us her AltCon experience from Gary Con. And then in the back half, we're going to be playing some Classic Gamma World. You play Classic Gamma World, Matt?
I have years ago, but not, not since I was a teenager, I suspect.
Well, you should give us a watch. It's a lot of fun. Fewer disintegrations than I would like, but I'm working on it.
You never have enough disintegrations.
You can never have enough disintegrations. So thank you all again very much. Matt, hang out in the green room for just a hot minute, and we're going to roll the credits. Thank you, Uncle Brad, for the incredible amount of love you showed tonight. The super chats are fantastic, and they help out all of you who super chatted. Let me be 100% clear about that. Everybody who threw a super chat up tonight, thank you all so very, very much. Thank you, Matt, for being here. I would say good luck on your Kickstarter, but Good Lord. You. Good night,
Good
everyone.
luck rolling.
Good night, everyone, and we'll catch you all on the flip side. Have a lovely evening.
Have you seen my owl bear? Here's to all the weirdos everywhere in the woods and in the air. Have you seen my owl bear? Should I shave off all my hair? Bobs are all around. Some live in tunnels underground. Some are fat, some are rich, some are sleeping in a ditch. Can you ride a crooked horse without a saddle way off course? Naked as a toad, all the way to Smoky Joe's. Have you seen the little creep driving fast in his little green Jeep? He smells like fish and brandy, but his rotten teeth look dandy. Take me to the show, I don't care if fast or slow. From action flicks to dancing dicks, just take me to the show.